Good evening and welcome back to the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, now in its 5th day already, and we're gearing up for the next faculty concert which is taking place in the Endler Hall on my left at 8 p.m. Now this promises to be a concert you will want to tell your kids about, with the world premiere of a brand new work by American jazz pianist and composer Kevin Harris, with whom I had the pleasure of speaking last night, entitled Resonance, a contemporary symphonic reflection through the courageous lens of Steve Biko. A long but important mouthful. It features a large orchestra-sized ensemble, replete with jazz trio, and will be led by Xandi van Dijk. And in the second half tonight, we will listen to another premiere, well, certainly the South African premiere, of the Nonetto No. 2 by Ollie Mustonen, featuring 8, or should I say 9, of our faculty string players. Now, as the audience starts filing into the Endler, let's cast our minds back to last night's faculty concert, to the first work on that program, the suspended harmonies of the Hymn to a Blue Hour by John Mackey and led by Liam Burton. I remember being so enchanted by the rich, warm sounds of that brass ensemble in the Hymn to a Blue Hour, intended to evoke the deep, rich blue color of the sky at twilight. Now, there's been a lot of commentary at this year's Sicmf about sheet music, tablets that have been delivered to the stage, page-turning devices refusing to cooperate, and even missing scores on stands now and then. And so we'll turn now, if you'll excuse the pun, to one of the unsung heroes of the Sicmf, librarian Teresa van der Merwe. Teresa, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Is being librarian of the Sicmf a very stressful job and role? Are you kept awake at night with urgent requests?
Yes. I recall a story from the day before the festival. All of us, I'm not the only librarian, it's me and Nathan Haysalman, who's a clarinet player, performing tonight actually. And we stayed up until 2 a.m. binding a lot of sheet music for a lot of players. There are 36 second violins in FCO this year, and it's extremely exciting, but a lot of binding occurring. And a lot of running around as well. And
is the running around related to the music or those other errands?
Those are errands. I think at this point we are glorified assistants at this point in the festival.
Because all the hard work has been done.
Yes, all the scores have been sourced. So now it's printing. So that we have stations. I'm the printer and Nathan is the runner.
So printer, so what's the sort of balance between paper and PDF in a festival like this? PDF being a digital form of the score.
Right. Well, you need a PDF for the printing. Or you have original scores as well, which are sourced from overseas, and they follow a unique adventure. Sometimes they go to the wrong country, but they are all here. They all arrived on time.
So that means, I mean, a lot of the plans have had to be in place months in advance in order to make sure that all the music is in place in time, and in fact in advance as well, so that folks can practice before they even arrive in Stellenbosch.
Very much.
Can you give us a sense of those timelines?
Right. So for the faculty, we had to source the music way ahead of time, and we had to send it out about 2 months ago, I believe.
Okay.
And it was interesting because we were dependent on Italian companies or American companies, and you know, with the Americans, the time difference is
makes life complicated.
Makes life complicated. So Nathan would wake up at 6 a.m. to have refreshment. Wait, is that the right way around? Wait, we were in America at the time, and then there were some time issues there, but we got all of the music on time.
And just to give our guests sort of a sense of how many scores we're talking about, so there's all these faculty concerts that we watch and enjoy here, but then there are also the orchestral concerts and all the parts. That's what you were talking about, binding. Then it's all the student ensembles and concerts.
So we have, for the student groups, we've got 90 student groups, and then we've got about 10 concerts, so like 100 scores, but then it's the score plus the parts, which tonight it's going to be a big item with a lot of players. So I think tonight we probably have about 50 parts. Yeah,
just wait till you see the stage in there. It's packed.
It's crowded, yes, but super, super exciting, and requires a lot of administration.
And you mentioned earlier kind of, the possibly the costs involved with a lot of this music as well, rights and licenses. What's the balance between music that's in the public domain? So I guess we're perhaps playing things like Brahms, Dvorak. You've got IMSLP, resources like that. That's the International Music Sheet.
Petrucci Library.
Right. Yeah.
So it depends on the programming, and Nina Schumann loves picking new pieces and interesting pieces, and she does an amazing job of programming. So we have Brahms, but we also have Harris, who has been commissioned, obviously, and Van Dijk as well, and Mackie, whose works have been performed a lot. But we get discounts from composers because we have a bit of an established relationship with them. And then, of course, we have Brahms, and we also contact CPO, or we use the university libraries, and we some of the students, like me and Nathan, we were in America at the University of Greensboro, and we also spoke with their library, and they also gave us some scores as well.
So it really, you've got a whole sort of bunch of different players from whom you can sort of work, as you mentioned, the library.
Yes.
Do you work with then, perhaps with someone like John Mackey, the composer, directly to source the scores? That's quite exciting.
Yes.
Do you ask him to autograph? He sends
No,
them
we
over?
ask for a discount.
Okay, yeah. Because I imagine also with the exchange rate, that probably is a considerable expense that the festival has to take into account.
Yes, but I think it's all worth it to have a variety of pieces for people to listen to.
Are you able to estimate the kind of number of reams or boxes of paper that you probably go through in the course of a festival? And do you plant an orchard of trees afterwards to compensate?
Well, last year we ran out very quickly of reams, so we bought that amount. But then this year I was the one to run to PNA on a Sunday to stock up once more. So,
do you have any amusing anecdotes to share with us, emergencies where you have been called maybe 2 minutes before a concert or at 2 a.m., help, we need this score right now, these parts immediately?
Yes, several times. Mostly, luckily, for rehearsals, but it becomes an athletic event to run to and fro. But I think 2 days ago, the viola player misplaced their score. So there was
That was for the faculty concert.
Yes,
I think we were kept waiting. I had to fill the dead air for a few minutes.
But there was definitely running involved and quick printing involved there.
You're a musician yourself?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So you can, and what do you play?
I'm a pianist with Nina Schumann.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So you know what it's like to be on the other side,
yes,
perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
And page turning.
Yes. Is there a work on this festival's program that's either happened or is still coming that you're particularly looking forward to? Perhaps like the Harris tonight?
Definitely the Harris. It's an extremely personal work as well, and I met Kevin Harris here as well, and he's an absolute breath of fresh air, an amazing person. And Chamberfest is so extremely human, and Nina Schumann contacted Kevin. They met at the UNISA piano competition, and it was just interesting because he has a connection with Steve Biko, who this piece is dedicated towards.
Yes.
And all the players in the orchestra seem to really love the work, and it's huge. And it's I think this work especially is the one that has the most people, except for the symphony.
Right.
But it also grants a lot of students the opportunity to talk to faculty from overseas and to create amazing music, and also kind of combining the world of jazz and classical music.
In all those respects you've mentioned, it really feels like a very appropriate centerpiece almost of this festival. And coming as it is in the middle of the festival, we always have especially commissioned work like this. And then with the particular resonance, again, no pun intended, given that's the title of the piece, with as you mentioned, the classical, the jazz idioms, but then also the subject matter and its very personal nature, and how it's important for us as South Africans to be reflecting on that all these years after democracy as well. So, well, thanks, Teresa. Wishing you plain sailing for the remainder of the festival.
It's calmed down a bit now.
Good, yes. Any crises are now well behind you, but fortunately between you and Nathan, we're very, very lucky to have an excellent co-librarian team. So. Thank you. So let's stay in a slightly dramatic mood then, shall we, for another memorable moment from last night's faculty concert, the first few minutes of the spirited second movement of the piano quartet by William Walton, which you may remember was the movement in which the low C string of David Cohen's cello decided that it had quite enough of being kept under tension. handled like a pro there. The show was delayed only by a few minutes while faculty cellist David Cohen repaired his C string. As Daniel Rowland reminded us, something that doesn't happen very often to the cello's lowest, longest, deepest string. Well, this is day 5 here at the special 20th anniversary of the Sicmf, and the 5th faculty concert is about to begin with a new work by Kevin Harris, one that continues a long tradition here at the festival of including a performance with spoken word or narration. And as suggested by the title of this work, Resonance, a contemporary symphonic reflection through the courageous lens of Steve Biko, it's inspired by one of South Africa's most important citizens and the Black consciousness movement. Now, while we wait for that performance to begin, one that got tongues wagging last night was the piano quintet in C by Walton and Metner, whom, as you may know, was a contemporary and friend of Rachmaninoff. And it was heartwarming to read your comments on our YouTube chat. Dirk wrote that the live performance surpassed his expectations significantly with textbook collaboration amongst our musicians in the way that they were all on the same page, leading many of us to agree with Liz Soul's sentiments that it was time to start a musical appreciation society on the music of Walton and Metner. Now let's revisit the opening minutes of that work, a movement entitled Molto Placido. Welcome back inside the Endler, and you'll notice that a very large group of musicians have congregated on the stage for this world premiere of a new work by Kevin Harris, Resonance, a contemporary symphonic reflection through the courageous lens of Steve Biko, which includes many guest musicians, including the composer himself, whom we can see sitting down at the piano. We also welcome Namisa and Mdlalose, our spoken word artist or narrator, to the stage, as well as the rest of Maestro Harris's jazz trio, Lumanyano Mzi drums and Stephen de Souza on jazz acoustic bass, with Suzanne Martens leading this particular ensemble. And as you will have heard the composer explain yesterday evening, this work is an invitation to us to reflect not only on the progress that we've made as a society, but also on the areas where progress is lacking. In that respect, it's a work of both reflection and discomfort. It considers the pioneering words of Biko while simultaneously challenging those who maintain the status quo. Xandi van Dijk is leading this world premiere.
And the earth, there was a vast land called Tambora. And in Tambora, a great wall stood. In some places, lush greenery flourished under the sun, and some seeds grew into tall and majestic trees. In other regions, a dense shadow blanketed the earth, and the trees who were born amongst the soil were not afforded the same sunlight and rain. For generations, this is the way it was. But there was a seemingly small yet audacious seed named Amani, who was born in the shadow but refused to accept the way things were. Why can't all seeds grow tall like the others? She asked. We breathe the same air, feel the same rain. Sugawen was osmolala. Most seeds scoffed at her naivety. Others were afraid. But her calling was greater than her adversaries, and she began to dig, searching, digging deeper and deeper, stretching her roots further than any seed before her to break through hardened earth. She recalled the call she had once heard before, an old song, She dug so deep for so long that the only voice she could hear was her own. We must grow from within. We must grow from within. We must grow from within. It began to crack open as they dug and sank Iara. And from this pressure, the wall began to crack. And after much struggle, the wall collapsed. Sunlight now reached every part of the garden. And for some time, hope blossomed. The shadowed seeds grew taller than ever before, some as tall as seeds who had flourished into the sun. It seemed the garden was finally becoming a place where all could flourish. But as the years passed, Amani began to notice something strange. Though the sun shone equally, various regions of the garden remained less fertile. Some trees bore plentiful mature fruit, while others grew crooked and weak. As Amani and the others worked to uncover the deep, tangled roots of the fallen wall, she encountered the respected elder trees, those grown under the shadow, courageously bearing the weight of its history. Their trunks were bent and their branches worn, yet they still stood proud, resolute, and strong. Amani respectfully approached one of the eldest trees, its unyielding bark scarred from years of struggle. Sabona gogo, yebo mdana. Gogo yina magacha ako asoteka kangaka, she asked. The tree slowly sighed, its leaves rustling like a weary inhaling breath. Whoa, mdana. We grew in soil that fought against us. Our roots had to twist and turn. To find the smallest sips of water. Our stalwart branches bent toward whatever light we could steal from the gaps in the wall. And when the wall fell, though the sun reached us, we had already been shaped by years of struggle. Amani frowned. Then why not reclaim the soil? Another elder tree, its trunk split where it had tried to grow despite the wall's presence, spoke with a brittle yet unwavering voice. We have survived by adapting to this soil. It is all we've ever known. Amani placed a leaf gently at the base of the elder trunk. Look at us. Look at our fruit. It bears far less resolve. The very soil that has kept us alive also continues to stunt our potential and growth. We are not meant to simply endure. We are meant to thrive. For days, Amani paced and pondered with that same determination. We must begin with the roots. Some of the poison roots must be carefully removed. Others must be reshaped, reabsorbed into the soil as nourishment, not as chains. We must continue to share knowledge with the all seeds, continue to learn from those who have grown strong despite the war, and plant new seeds that know not the old struggles but still honor them. The younger trees and the elder trees murmured amongst themselves. Some resisted and others did not. Some were afraid of change and others were reminded of an inner strength that longed to continue reaching towards the sky. Slowly one by one they agreed and they sang and they dug. After consulting the wisdom of the elders, they began the work with Amani's guidance, not just of tearing away the old, but of healing, regenerating, and growing the new. The time came for Amani to address the garden that had persisted even in the shadows. It is not enough that the wall has fallen. Something still poisons us. Amani and a select few undeterred others began to dig once more, Gilah. This time not to grow, but to find what lay beneath the surface. What they found were unbelievably deeper, more tangled roots of the wall. Deeply embedded remnants of the past that continue to unknowingly drain life and hope from their soil. Amani and the others dug deeper into the soil, their roots weaving through the earth, searching for the cause of their continued struggle. What they found was something far more insidious than they had imagined. Beneath the surface, the wall had left behind a vast, tangled network of roots, gnarled and twisted, some as thick as tree trunks, others so fine they wrapped themselves around every grain of soil. Though the wall above had fallen, its foundation remained, draining the life from the ground, corrupting their very potential to grow. Some were so deep that they reached the core of the earth, anchoring a past that refused to let them go. If a few roots suffered, then all roots unknowingly suffered. If a few roots suffered, then all roots unknowingly suffered. The wall may have cast shadows upon us, but the light has always been ours. We have always persisted, and we have always prevailed. It was now even more clear to Amani, tearing out the old roots would not be enough. The soil itself had to be regenerated. us to heal the soil. Amani cried out. We must plant new roots, roots strong enough to replace the old ones. So they began. Some worked too carefully to remove the remnants of the wall's foundation, making space for new growth. Others sought wisdom from the trees that had endured, learning how they survived despite the poisoned soil. The younger seeds, full of vigor, stretched their roots far and wide, breaking through the decay and drawing in fresh nutrients from beyond the poisoned ground. Yet there were those who inevitably resisted. Some of the older trees who had grown twisted and gnarled from years of struggle against the remnants of the wall were afraid. What if we do not survive this change? They asked. We are already surviving, Amani replied. Now is the time to thrive. As the seasons passed, something remarkable happened. The new roots, nourished by fresh rain, shared wisdom and determination, began to take hold. Slowly, the soil changed. The trees that had once struggled now stood taller. Their leaves became fuller, their fruit more plentiful. And in time, even the most ancient of trees, those who had known only hardship, began to feel a weight of the past loosen its grip. But Amani and the others knew the work was never truly finished. Every new season brought challenges, a drought, a storm, an old belief creeping back in like an invasive vine. But they tended the soil, and they faithfully protected it, watching for these signs, ensuring that the garden never fell back into decay. And one day, a young seed approached Amani, with its leaves trembling in the breeze. If we keep tending the soil, keep pulling out old roots and planting new ones, will the garden ever be complete? Amani smiled. Her branches reached towards the sky. Completion is not the goal. Growth is the goal. A garden is never truly finished. It changes with every season, with every new seed that takes root. If we focus only on reaching an end, we will miss the beauty of what we are becoming. The work of healing the soul is not a burden, but a promise that every seed, no matter where it is planted, will have the chance to grow strong, to bear its own fruit, to add to its own inspiration into the world. And so, the garden of seeds became a garden of endless renewal, a place where the past was not forgotten, but transformed, a place where the light belonged to all, and where every seed could realize their potential to reach for the sky.
You heard it here first. The 20th anniversary of the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, Tuesday, the 8th of July, the world premiere of a brand new work by Kevin Harris, whom you can see in the center of the stage, standing next to his piano, together with our incredible cast of performers, visitors, faculty artists, Xandi van Dijk, the conductor, Suzanne Martens leading the orchestra, Namisa Mdlalose, our spoken word artist, narrator, singer, encourager, all of those things seamlessly blended with the jazz trio comprising Maestro Harris himself, Lumanyano Mzi, drums, and Stephen de Souza, jazz acoustic bass. Yes, please take and savor your applause. Resonance, a contemporary symphonic reflection through the courageous lens of Steve Biko, was the name of the work that we have heard for the very first time and that was specially composed for this evening. A beautiful allegorical tale of Amani, a name which means peace, as you probably know. And did you get all the influences in that work, from Tchaikovsky to Nina Simone? I got a few others. The cinematic orchestra came to mind. The seamless integration of all those styles. And so many wonderful quotes from the pen of the composer, Kevin Harris. Completion is not the goal, growth is the goal. We would do well to remember that as a society and also as musicians. Maestro Xandi van Dijk singling out particular members of the orchestra, Ekaterina Kornishina, flutist. One wonders how much of her score was written down. Dwight Parry, oboist. Our three clarinetists, faculty and participants, the bassoons, including Offense. Wonder if she's playing her new instrument. The horns, trumpets, trombones, percussion section. Very good. All the strings, everyone on their feet, including the audience as we celebrate this world premiere. Didn't you love the very special interaction between the narrator and the pianist at many times during the performance? The way Kevin and Namisa were sharing an intimate moment on the stage as the story of Amani unfolded. Remember, this was intended as a work of both reflection and discomfort. The tension in which we as a society exist, but also as performers, never quite being able to relax. It's the tension that brings the growth and the development and striving for improvement, which was one of the central messages of this work. Well, I think we need a glass of wine to digest and discuss what we've just heard. I'm going to be chatting to faculty trombonist Mark Hampson shortly, and I'm going to be asking him for some reflections, what he thought of the work. If you could pop those in the chat, that would be cool. It would be nice to have a little discussion and let us know what you thought about this brand new work that you heard for the very first time, coming to you live from the Endler Hall at this year's Sicmf. And welcome back to the foyer of the Endler Hall, where the audience is alight with conversation and admiration about that new work we've just heard by Kevin Harris for large ensemble and dealing with many themes that are very close to our hearts and minds here in South Africa. And indeed, someone who has experienced many of the special Sicmf commissions over the years is Mark Hampson, faculty trombonist, who comes, like so many of our faculty artists, with an immensely impressive CV, having played with so many top orchestras under many top conductors, and has a busy teaching schedule with positions in both Germany and Spain, I believe.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely.
Mark, welcome. Thank you for joining us now for our interval interview.
My pleasure.
And perhaps just before we turn to you, I think we need to reflect for a few moments on the work we've just heard. Anything that immediately comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it was new for me as well tonight, so the first time I heard it, and I think it's just hugely inspiring, first of all, to see the combination of forces, and it's not so new, of course, to have jazz and sort of in this symphonic style too, but I think it was really unique tonight with this, especially with the mix with the narration, very powerful, of course, and I think it brings so much to the festival also to have these incredible, exciting new works sort of performed here. And also what's particularly special for me is to see not only many of the tutors involved, but also, of course, the participants. That's so amazing they can be involved in this. Yeah. It's fantastic.
As you mentioned, a very large ensemble up there. Yeah. So you were fortunate perhaps to have an evening off in some respects. And
exactly.
Your trombone colleagues were up there on stage.
Absolutely.
But on that note, the trombone, if you'll forgive me, is not an instrument perhaps we immediately associate with chamber music.
Yeah.
But there is so much wonderful music composed for your instrument, and that's one of the reasons you often return to this festival.
Absolutely.
But should we perhaps be changing our perceptions of the way then we think about chamber music?
Yeah, I think in any case, chamber music is something, it's more a philosophy than a particular sort of combination of instruments. So, in fact, chamber music is all about collaboration. It's all about listening carefully and sensitively to each other. It's all about teamwork and lack of ego. So I think actually chamber music is, you can even in a way play in a symphony orchestra and still play with the chamber music philosophy. And I think for that reason, it's very important that all instruments and all sorts of combinations, it's essential that they're able to experience this and work in this way. It's a super important skill for all musicians.
I'm a bit embarrassed now that my rather crude question has elicited such a philosophical answer. But I'm so glad you've mentioned that, because I don't think anyone else yet has picked up on perhaps that very sort of essence of chamber music and the communication and the collegiality and the conversation that needs to happen. And that happens regardless whether it's two instruments on stage or a large ensemble with a conductor who's sort of bringing everyone together, as we heard this evening.
Exactly, and it is something that, I mean, my principal job is working with, teaching chamber music to all manner of different groups, and I see a lot of it about also teaching communication to young people, resolution of conflicts in the group, and it's a super important thing for all walks of life, yeah.
So conflicts, tension is not only in the music, but in interpersonal interactions.
Yes, and
as well.
everyone, all passionate musicians have their own opinions about how things should be performed, and then of course somehow you have to find the skill set and communication skills to know how to resolve that and how to move forward.
So you're suggesting that there's perhaps a very thin barrier, perhaps, between music making and life and humanity, and perhaps we shouldn't maybe think of them as two separate things, but there is so much spill over between the two, and ways in which we can harness skills we develop in the one sort of aspect of life in the other. Absolutely,
and I think, in any case, music is one of the very things, essence of us as human beings, and we all, it's always a reflection of the culture that we come from, and of course it is the universal language, that it doesn't need, I can play with someone with whom we don't have any language in common, but we can communicate perfectly through music.
And do you find that sort of diversity in music in so many respects, from the participants, genres, eras, styles, nationalities, those are well represented here? This is your third Chamber Music Festival here in Stellenbosch. Do you think we strike a good balance amongst all of those things, even here on the southern tip of Africa, which perhaps contributes to that diversity?
Absolutely. I think, in any case, I've been coming to South Africa for some years, and I remember when I first came here, I was truly impressed by the diversity of culture, the tolerance, the huge sort of breadth of different cultures, I guess. And I think what's wonderful about this festival is that they managed to harness this and combine it with not only tutors from all over the world, but of course it's a great joy to welcome the invited ensembles, and I know many of them also outside of South Africa, and I know it's always a very special experience to come here and experience this vibrant mix of communication between all sorts of different walks of life here.
And there's a tremendous appetite, isn't there, from everyone, from the faculty to give, from the participants to receive, from everyone just to share.
Yeah, I mean, this is what for me is so exhilarating about working here and teaching here, is also that the students are so incredibly open and want to sort of extract as much as they can, which is brilliant, because it's not always that way. And, if you go elsewhere, and I think this is really particularly special here. It's really a very special quality, yeah.
You mentioned kind of the value add almost. You're sort of on duty the entire time you're here. I mean, even yesterday you had this fantastic conversation just before the faculty concert with Ekaterina, our flute faculty member, talking about tension and anxiety in performance and how that afflicted you for many years, and how you were able to overcome that and to be able to have a conversation about something so personal is tremendously important for these young musicians to hear. Did you get a lot of feedback after that?
I did, awful lot. I mean, really, a lot of musicians and faculty, all sorts of people came to me and were extremely positive. And I think it's very important that whatever wherever you got with your career and whatever activities you realize, if you're doing more high-profile stuff, people often perceive, oh, well, that person doesn't go through have the same issues, but it's very important to express that it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. These are very human challenges, and we all have to deal with them. And I think I certainly noticed with a lot of the participants, they were so happy that they felt that we could share in that.
Yes. And that does seem to be a very special aspect of the atmosphere of that festival. It's not about the perfection, Kevin Harris put it perfectly in the piece we've just heard. Completion is not the goal. Growth is the goal.
Absolutely.
It's understanding yourself better, developing better in order to become a better human and then to do better justice to the music.
Absolutely. No, and I think it is the eternal, a really good musician will all constantly be striving, all the way to the end of their career and beyond, hopefully, So I think that is the wonderful thing about music, and what keeps me very motivated, even, now sort of beyond the middle of my career, you can say.
Do you feel you've arrived?
No, you never feel like you've arrived. No,
question.
Absolutely. No, absolutely not. I think, and that's a wonderful thing, that also with an instrument, it's such to control this instrument and to make it actually an extension of yourself. That's a constant, or even to do very simple things in a very elegant and coordinated and beautiful way. You can constantly strive to do things better.
Yeah. That was another aspect of the conversation with Katarina that came up last night. When did you last perform a piece of music perfectly?
Yeah.
And everyone said, well, not yet. I mean, that's kind of what we aspire to, but it's also realizing that that's unlikely and probably actually impossible. Sure, there are fragments or moments that go extremely well, but one's always striving to sort of do even better than one did before.
Absolutely, and I think it's part of the problem. It's something I battle against, or I work a lot with on my own students when I'm in Germany, is to try and free them from perfection, if you like. So of course we're always trying to do things better, but we're also trying to communicate and say something authentic. And if you're totally playing defensively in the pursuit of perfection, then there's nothing surer to hinder that process.
Indeed, and one needs to be able to take risks and experiment and all these exciting things.
Exactly.
But perhaps let's turn the spotlight or the microphone to you and the trombone. When did you realize this was your instrument?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm from the brass band tradition in Britain, so I used to play the euphonium. But I remember, when I was about 14 or 15, I heard the brass band, a really good one, and I heard the bass trombone in the band, and I just thought, oh my goodness, that is the most amazing sound. I want to be able to do that. Yeah. And actually it took then about 6 or 7 years to really sort of move properly into bass trombone playing. Luckily for me, in a way, I could never play high, so it was the obvious choice to be a bass trombonist. But from then on, the ball got rolling, and it was kind of unstoppable. The instrument sort of, in a way, chose me as well. I think that's the point,
This is your musical companion. You're still excited as ever to open up the case and there's your instrument.
Yes, absolutely. Every day I open the case and I can't wait to get it out. I honestly can't remember in all the 30 years I've been playing professionally that I didn't want to get the instrument out and play it.
As a keyboardist, it's almost making my fingers itch your enthusiasm. What are some of the peculiarities or the challenges of the bass trombone that sort of set it apart from other instruments?
Yeah, any brass instrument is extremely visceral. So because it's the body that vibrates, it's not a reed or a string. And when you play an instrument like the bass trombone, because the vibration is so large on your face, you feel it through your whole body. Gosh. So when you play the instrument, like I said, it's a very visceral experience. But the big challenge in a way is the amount of air that it needs. It's an instrument that takes even more air than the tuba, actually. Gosh. And although that would not immediately be the obvious thing, And so we spend most of our time, and I've said this to students here, negotiating with the air, just to see what we can do, how much can we give, how can we produce a phrase that makes sense. You know, this is one of the big challenges.
And presumably a balance then between sort of stamina and effort. Can you only sort of play for certain sort of periods of time, after which maybe you become sort of lightheaded, or you might need to take a break, or your lips give in? Or...
Absolutely, and I think, you know, one of the pursuits, the main pursuits to which you go through playing the instrument, is to play in as an efficient way as possible, and that's one of the main things I practice, is to be as efficient and elegant as possible, because otherwise the instrument eventually it consumes you.
Takes over, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's the situation. Yeah.
How much longer are you in South Africa for? Just the few days
just till
remaining?
Friday, unfortunately.
Till Friday, right?
I fly already back to Germany on Friday.
Okay, gosh.
Yeah.
And after that, any particularly exciting engagements you have to look forward to?
I've got an extremely
us the
full.
highlights.
So I play trombone. I'm playing as a soloist at a trombone festival in Poland. Then I go to Mexico to do a similar project to this in Mexico. Then almost the whole of August I play one of my dear, most prized projects is Lucerne Festival Orchestra. So I'm doing that the whole of August, and then I'm on tour the whole of September before going back to college. So that's my summer.
Gosh, yeah. If there were a sort of a bucket list piece or performance or something, if you only were able to play one more work on your instrument, what would it be?
Ooh, I think, I mean, I've played most things now. I would say to play The Ring.
Oh, really?
Which is, of course, that's kind of cheating, because we're talking about, you know, 12, 13 hours of music.
Yes.
So it's a little bit cheating. But
I think it was the other night who also said playing The Ring was their sort of bucket list. I'll have to check back and see.
Yeah. I mean, such a
musical Mount Everest.
Yes. And I've never done it. It's one of the few things I haven't done yet.
Any of the constituent operas yet?
I mean, I've done sort of excerpts, and actually in October I'll play a program, a tour of The Ring Without Words. So I'm getting closer.
That's interesting.
You know, it's an arrangement by Lauren Mazel. So that's very cool. But yes, like I say, I'm still sort of, how can I put it? You know, coveting the opportunity to play The Ring.
One's always got to have something to look forward to,
Absolutely.
no doubt.
Absolutely.
If that opportunity comes around, there'll be so many others to sort of
Just a
take
shout
its
out,
place.
if anyone needs someone to do The Ring,
Yes,
then
indeed. I mean, that's almost sort of a challenge for a musician in a way, that there is just so much incredible music out there, music that's being created almost every day. How does one sort of, you've got to be quite picky, maybe, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that I played almost 30 years in a day-to-day orchestra, so quite an adventurous orchestra programming-wise. So I did an awful lot of stuff.
Which orchestra was that?
This was the Gran Canaria Philharmonic.
Okay,
so I lived for almost 30 years on the Canary Islands in Spain. So now I'm focusing on teaching. I do tend to just then pick programs that I really want to do, which is a tremendous luxury, you know.
But I mean, that's one way to be sort of surefire excited about the music.
Exactly.
Maybe just last sort of question to come back to your students, because teaching and mentorship is clearly such an important part of your career as a musician. Any one or two sort of aspects or philosophies that you really try to get across to the students? I know we've already sort of covered a lot in the context of this talk, but if there were sort of one piece of advice, or maybe even something you wish you had been told or known as a much younger musician.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly, from the point of view, I think understanding, which is often not taught, that music is communication. So I often say to the students, you know, the ideal chain of events, if you like, is that when you play, you feel something. The stronger the better, the emotion. When you play, the audience or whoever's listening to you hears you play and feels the same.
Yes.
And this is why music is such a potent means of communication. And this is often not spoken about, weirdly, when you're training. It's often centered on the music and as we said before, on getting as close to perfection as you can. But actually, if you have a story to tell, and I think everybody does, then you have to practice projecting these things through the instrument. And this is what I wish someone had really encouraged me also to practice, not only the technical side, but this side of things.
Because it does require practice, doesn't it?
Yes,
you don't just stand up and decide, oh, I'm going to externalize in a perfect way what I'm feeling on the inside that others are going to pick it up. It's something you refine and get better at over
Absolutely,
time. So, Thank you for sharing that potent insight.
Pleasure.
We need to adjourn this conversation to the bar. We've got a lot more
Absolutely.
to Mark, thank you for making the time.
My pleasure.
For sharing some insights with us this evening. So, fast-paced, passionate, energetic, the life of a top trombonist, not unlike these closing minutes now of the Metner Piano Quintet that we heard last night in the faculty concert. And look at that perfect timing. We've been told to go back inside. See you in there now.
It's always such a treat to chat to these faculty musicians, just sharing in their philosophies, their aspects of life and music, the way that being a good human really does seem to reinforce being a good musician and vice versa. It's a pity that the time is always ticking with these interviews. These are the sort of late night conversations one would love to have for hours over many, many beers. But the joy, of course, is that they're recorded, and so we can refer back to them and really take in so much of the wisdom that's been shared with us off the stage this week at the Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival, to say nothing of all the beauty that is being shared on the stage. A stage you can see now here in the Endler Hall, coming to you live, perhaps not geared out the way you were expecting. Look at all those drums. I wonder, could there be a surprise coming our way? Maybe. We're just waiting for the final guests and participants to arrive back in the hall. As I mentioned a bit earlier, really a very special buzz this evening after a world premiere like that. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone wants to congratulate the composer. I hope you enjoyed it too. And thank you, as always, for joining us on this channel, experiencing these concerts live from Stellenbosch. Perhaps while we wait for our musicians to come onto stage for this surprise work, I can tell you a little bit about the piece that will take up most of the second half of this concert, the Nonetto number 2 by Olli Mustonen, the Finnish composer whom we've got to know quite well through these festival concerts. And this is a South African premiere. So what a treat. All the music we're hearing tonight, this is the very first time it's being heard on our shore. So our next composer, after this surprise item, is the Finnish composer, pianist and conductor Olli Mustonen. He was born in 1967, and he's known for his blending of contemporary art music trends with a deep knowledge of classical and Baroque traditions. And in his works, he often engages with promise I didn't have a glass of wine, engages with historical forms, reinterpreting them with rhythmic vitality, often drawn from minimalism and post-minimalism. And those familiar with Louis Spohr's Nonette of 1813 will hear an echo of music history in Mustonen's Nonettes. And it's the second of these Nonettes by Mustonen that will be performed this evening. This work was completed in 2000 and reflects the composer's deep interest in counterpoint and large-scale structure, as well as his exposure to the repetition-generated textures of minimalism. One thinks of someone like Philip Glass, who doesn't like to be called a minimalist composer, but rather, what does he say? It's all about repetition. His music is repetition and structures built around repetition. Now, we've heard the Argentine composer Osvaldo Golijov, who was born in 1960, on this stage before, and he was a student of George Crumb. Golijov's known for his unique fusion of classical, Latin American, and Jewish musical traditions, and his many collaborations include working with the Kronos Quartet, the cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and the legendary mezzo-soprano Anne-Sophie van Otter. And he's currently composer in residence at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. But Golijov has not only achieved fame as a composer of music for the concert hall, his film music has also resulted in critical acclaim. Javon is here with an announcement.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here. 20th anniversary. The faculty, we are thrilled to be here. My name is Javon, and I'm the percussion faculty here. And how many of you were here last year? Great. And how many of you remember that we brought on some non-percussionists to play some drums for you guys? Well, by popular demand, we are doing it again. So, we have several faculty who have volunteered to perform a piece that we have rehearsed twice to do for you guys. The one thing I love about being a drummer, the one thing I love about being a percussionist is that my job has built-in stress relief. Everything I do, it gets me the energy, and you guys are bringing the energy now. So for the second year in a row, I want you guys to give a Stellenbosch welcome to the Sicmf faculty percussion ensemble performing who? Dijk.
faculty members I never expected to see bearing drumsticks, let alone playing drums or rims of drums in quite that way. Kudos to Javon for leading us through that routine. A piece called Hu Daiku for percussion that was inspired by traditional Japanese taiko drumming. Great hit with the audience as well here in the Endler, on their feet, as you can see. This seems to be becoming something of an Sicmf tradition. Making percussion accessible to all since 2024. Very nicely done. High fives all round. Time for the serious music. Wait, what serious music? There's nothing serious about this music. As we said earlier, it's about progress, not perfection. We just try to do the music as best as we can, to share that with the audience in a way that resonates with what we feel inside of us. You'll notice there 9 stands on the stage of the Endler Hall here. The 5th faculty concert coming to you live from the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival. 9 stands because this is a nonette coming up, which means it's a piece for 9 instruments by the Finnish composer Olli Mustonen. And it will unfold over 4 movements, and it will be led by Daniel Rowland. The musicians all having to go into a sensory deprivation room or something to calm down after all that hectic drumming before they return to the stage for more conventional music. Well, Nina Schumann has just walked past here. She's returned to her seat at the back of the hall to preside over proceedings. Don't forget, if you can, to join us during the day here at the Sicmf for the fantastic activities on offer, from masterclasses to ensemble concerts, and your chance to stock up on Sicmf merch. That's the most important. So you can live with this festival for a whole year until next year's 21st Sicmf. And we welcome our players onto the stage for the nonette. Olli Mustonen, another South African premier. Enjoy this performance. Musicians refining their placements, putting down their page-turning pedals, straightening their stands. Perhaps a quick tune will be in order. Maya really stealing the show with her beautiful dress. And so now I leave you in the company of the musicians for the South African premiere of the Nonetto number 2 by Olli Mustonen, unfolding in 4 movements, coming to you live from the Endler Hall in Stellenbosch. you'll have to forgive me. I just rushed in from the hall because I was so captivated by especially the finale of that work that I couldn't pull myself away. So I thought I'd leave you with just a few seconds of applause to imagine yourself immersed in the glorious clarity of the space of the Endler Concert Hall, that work by Olli Mustonen, his Nonetto, performed by an all-star cast of our faculty here at the 20th Sicmf. Look at them, shower them with praise, because, as is often the case, when works sound either very easy or either very difficult, they are usually even harder than they look or they sound, either way.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Because that was, although a rather cool piece and a rather tricky piece, it's rather short. So we have two, maybe more than you bargained for, two encores. First is the 24 Paganini Caprices played by Mr. Barrow. You wish. No, first we'd love to play the last movement again. And after that we have something else, a very sweet little love song that will get its African tribute tonight. But first, the last movement. we'd like to play a little piece by contemporary Argentinian composer called Osvaldo Golijov. I think in your program notes there is something about the piece, but the piece itself is not actually announced. Maybe you heard about a movie by Coppola that was released a couple of months ago called Megalopolis. And the music for that has been a kind of 15-year project between Coppola and Osvaldo Golijov. And we had the pleasure, many of us, of working with Osvaldo in Amsterdam on a recording project in January. And during that project, he suddenly turned up with this little piece and said this could be the encore for the recording. It's the love music, the love theme called Esperanza from this movie. What's it called? Megalopolis. Megalopolis, exactly. And it's only been played once or twice anywhere, really. We made that kind of recording. I think it's the third performance ever, and certainly the first south of Naples. So, pleasure to play this for you. And there will be two, you will see. You will see.
beautifully shared amongst the instruments of our 9 performers on stage this evening in the faculty concert. Plaintive, poignant melodies of, if I understood it correctly, music by Osvaldo Golijov from his 2024 soundtrack to Megalopolis, the Francis Ford Coppola film. And I think, did Daniel say, was that the track Esperanza, Hope? Well, you've had 3 for the price of 1 this half, starting off with our impromptu percussion ensemble, the Nonetto by Mustonen, and then this beautiful nod and music hot off the press to the film world. Xandi van Dijk leading the charge of our string players back onto the stage for much deserved applause and appreciation from the very warm hands of our audience here in the Endler Hall this evening in Stellenbosch. But why does it have to end? Another faculty concert all wrapped up. We've reached the midpoint of the 20th Stellenbosch International Chamber Music Festival.
Always full of surprises at the Sicmf, and certainly getting your money, or should we say your streaming's worth, at this festival with a few unscripted contributions this evening. A tale of 2 halves, indeed, beginning with the world premiere of Kevin Harris's Sicmf Commission, complemented after interval by the surprising revelation that many of our faculty artists are indeed adept drummers. And that set the scene for the Nonetto number 2 by Mustonen, and then a little cherry on top by Golijov afterwards. So do join us tomorrow night here at the Sicmf for day 6. Even better if you can drop by during the day for the student ensemble concerts at 1 and at 5 p.m. And then a workshop with faculty flutist Ekaterina Kornishina at 3 p.m. entitled Sports Psychology Techniques for Musicians. Not so different, are they? A musical performance or a sports match? In the 6th faculty concert tomorrow at 8 o'clock will be a poignant work by the American composer of Iranian heritage, Kian Revai, his family photos for string quartet, and after that the octet by Jörg Widmann, and finally, at last at this year's festival, the music of Johannes Brahms, his string quintet number 1, a work that he confided to his close friend Clara Schumann was one of the finest works he's ever written. Now, some of us have been persuaded to go and join a karaoke sesh down the road, so expect some bleary eyes and ears tomorrow morning. But in the evening, we'll be back for another festival concert full of chamber music magic at this special 20th anniversary Sicmf. And so until tomorrow evening, it's good night from us.